Get to a story, a big developing story we followed for you yesterday evening. A former Canadian Olympian is now wanted in the U.S. for running a drug trafficking ring, and he's also wanted in the GTA for a double murder in Caldeon last year. The FBI is offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of 43-year-old Ryan James Wedding, who's believed to be living in Mexico. He's accused of running a drug trafficking ring that shipped vast amounts of cocaine across North and South America. Police say he's also involved in several murders. For more on how a complex investigation like this plays out, we're joined live by CTV's public safety analyst and former OPP commissioner, Chris Lewis. Chris, good to see you. Where does the OPP and other police services involved in this massive transnational investigation actually start?
Well, ultimately, they're tied into the RCMP, who have liaison officers all over the world, and as well Interpol. So the investigation piece at this end was conducted by Peel and the OPP, two of the biggest and best police services in Canada. So they're well equipped to deal with the homicide investigation piece. The drug trafficking piece will involve the Homeland Security in the U.S. It'll involve, as I said, the RCMP and others. So kind of tracking from there where he might be is a big piece of this now, but they'll be all over it. And whether or not they ever find him and get him back is another thing, but certainly they'll give it their best.
You've got this guy who 20 years ago was at the top of the snowboarding game in this country, representing Canada in the Salt Lake City Olympics. His photo on the screen right now, Ryan James Wedding. Now he's alleged to be this massive drug warlord who directed these murders. Two of them in Caldeon, an innocent couple, one in Brampton, another one in Niagara Falls. I mean, what does it take, Chris, when you're going after someone, I guess, who was once high profile and has now made some pretty bizarre, let's call it, career choices?
For sure. I mean, there's quite a transition there from an Olympic athlete representing Canada internationally and the fame that comes with that, to just a life of greed and crime, ultimately not only running huge quantities of drugs, like 60 tons a year from South America through Mexico into Canada, but then orchestrating homicides, including the murders of an innocent couple, in a case of mistaken identity, and a young female family member that was shot multiple times. And so this transition's been really to the depths of hell for this guy by personal choices. And the rationale behind that is purely greed, I'm sure. But in the meantime, he's a wanted fugitive, and everyone on the planet's going to be trying their best to locate him and get him extradited back to Canada to face the music.
Of course, money talks. There's a $50,000 reward being offered by the FBI for his arrest or information leading to it. When it comes to extradition, Chris, how likely is that to ever happen? I mean, considering the severity of the drug charges he's facing south of the border as well. What comes first? What charges does he answer to first?
Well, whoever gets him first will have him first, and then the other countries involved will be negotiating to have him appear there. So, for example, if he's captured by U.S. authorities, extradited back to the United States, he'll be facing trials there. And then Canada and the U.S. will have discussions around, okay, how do we extradite him back to Canada now to face charges? And if, for example, he's getting 30, 40 years in jail in the U.S. for the drug trafficking case, the charges in Canada may just wait and may never be heard. But that's for legal authorities on both sides of the border to figure out through their respective departments of justice.
You know, I've been hearing this guy's name, Ryan Wedding, for a while from Toronto police in contacts, and Toronto police are involved in the drug trafficking investigation that's part and parcel of just this massive probe now. When it comes to Wedding, I mean, 13 years, according to the FBI, he's been operating this ring. Are you surprised that it's taken this long for, I guess, formal charges to be brought forward, for them to put out his picture to say, we're looking for you?
No, I mean, that's the investigative process. Sometimes these investigations go quickly and they put the dots together to enable the charges to be laid, and sometimes they don't. There's a lot of factors at stake here, how many informants, the use of all sorts of investigative techniques to actually put the case together. And this time it took a long time. And, other investigations we've seen, it comes together in days. So it's no slight on the part of the investigators whatsoever. They just have to follow the evidence and then convince the Department of Justice that the charges are there and there's a likelihood of conviction.
How closely do you think behind the scenes the OPP, Peel, Niagara police are now working together? And do you think that they're also maybe looking at other murders or shootings across the country that they can now potentially pin on Ryan Wedding?
Well, they'll be working together very well, and despite some public criticism of the ability for Ontario Police Service to work together in the past, it's come together very well, and they're working together better now than ever. And so they'll be joined at the hip, and once again working with Toronto and U.S. authorities and international authorities, including the RCMP. So putting all that together in a way that benefits all it'll come together very well ultimately. But locating this guy will be the issue. And then once again, the sequence of the laying of charges and who will get him first will be another factor altogether.
Last question for you, Chris. The last high-profile drug case that I can think of was El Chapo. What are the likelihood that you think Ryan Wedding ever makes it back to the U.S. or Canada alive?
Well, he'll probably be tied to cartels, given that the drugs are coming through Mexico. So there's some ability there to keep him in hiding, but he's not El Chapo, and so ultimately they will find him. And just in response to your earlier question, ultimately they'll be looking at all kinds of cases now that may be linked to that. If there's any folks out there that have been killed or any attempts on lives that may be linked to that drug group, then of course he'll be a prime suspect. And a lot of cards to unfold here over time. But I'd be surprised if they don't find him at some point and get him back.
No question, he's not El Chapo, but he went by the name we heard from the FBI, El Jefe. CTV's public safety analyst, former OPP Commissioner Chris Lewis, thanks so much for your time and your analysis as always.
Anytime, Beatrice. Thank you.